Let's get straight to it. Conscious Crypto, like, subscribe, do whatever you want. I don't care if you hate this video, give it a likes, give it a thumbs up, support the channel. So today, talking about the 3 types of traders, essentially 3 trading styles from a psychological perspective, and how you implement your trading. So I could consider him a mentor, is Crown Crypto. And Eric says that technical analysis is incomplete, right? He relies on quantitative analysis, which is the way he backtests his strategies and then produces the math, the numbers, the statistics that verify whether he has a legitimate strategy and he can rely on it. I find this very, very practical, and especially because managing your psychology is a nonstop game. It's nonstop. The mind is a monkey. And to actually put some element of this game of uncertainty into the realm of certainty is practical. In fact, it's probably professional. So we're going to talk about these 3 trading styles presented by Mark Douglas, and specifically correlate them to the 3 skills, creative skills, that Tony Robbins attributes to himself and the likes of Tom Brady and Ray Dalio, and why they are successful. So no matter what field you're in, what career you're in, what profession you're in, these 3 creative skills will make you successful. Well, they will enhance your ability to execute and stand apart. So it's like, to me, if you're going to do a thing, do it well. So let's figure out how to do things better, right? Do less, do it bigger, do it better. All right, here's Mark Douglas.
There's mechanical trading, subjective trading, and intuitive trading. There's 3 stages. In other words, in mechanical, what you want to do is you want to trade with a rigid criteria that defines your edge. All execution decisions are made in advance of market activity. The market either conforms to your definition of an edge or not, and you execute your trades based on a plan. In other words, what you're doing in the mechanical mode of trading is you're limiting the number of variables that you're dealing with in the market.
Okay, that has power. There are so many variables that create uncertainty in the market. So to actually narrow down the amount of variables that go into your trading execution is wise. It's the thing to freaking do, especially when you're starting out. But so many that I've mentored and so many that I've watched, including my early journey, thought technical analysis was the whole of it. And it's not. Just because you think you have, I know how to use the Fibonacci. Congratulations, you learned how to click a few buttons. You graduated to the level of a chimp. I'm speaking to myself a little bit too, because it's funny, man. You get to this point where you're like, look at this, and I see that. Oh, and I could have, woulda, shoulda, done. And when I did this, and like, ooh, this is cool. But like when you don't actually put it into a back-tested formula that shows you wins and losses, hit rates, expectancy, when you begin to extract numbers and say like, oh, okay, now I generally know how much money I make per trade. And once your trade starts to get to that level, you can begin to take profit. If not all, some. And if you're losing money, you also know how much or what your average loss is. So you have another certainty to give you the execution of closing said trade, right? To persuade you to say, against all the things going in your head, like, well, if I just let it run a little bit longer, it'll come back in my favor. I could lose less. All that bullshit nonsense in your mind, right? It's not working for me. I don't think it's working for you. That's why I'm making this video. So mechanical trading is all about utilization of said pattern recognitions. So we've taken the market, we've looked at the market, we've seen this, and that, and we're like, oh, okay, that happens a lot. And when that happens, it tends to go this way. So you have the if, then, therefore setup. Once you have the if, then algorithm of your trading strategy, you then go back test it so you get a better certainty and you take out some of the variables that causes confusion, and that way you have better utilization of the patterns that you see in the market. So I believe pattern recognition does come first, but we're going to relate this aspect of mechanical trading to execution, which specifically relates to pattern utilization. Quick word on that from Tony.
And then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it, it's another thing to use it.
Pretty simple, right? He's in and out on it, but it's one thing to see it, it's another thing to use it, right? To utilize it, to execute on it. And that's why traders who might be the best technical analysis, economic advisors in the world can't trade, because there is a huge gap between what you see and what you can act on. One thing to see it, another thing to use it. Okay, next is subjective trading. Now, subjective trading is considered the next level by Mark Douglas. This is level 2, okay? This is once you become a mechanical trader and you've installed the belief that you are a consistently successful trader, that when you go to trade, that over a large enough sample size, you make money, and that you have managed your risk well enough to see that sample size through. So once you've established that through ideally mechanical trading, whether paper or actual money being preferred, then you move on to subjective trading. Subjective trading is where I found most of my success and most of my joy in the game. But my foundation in mechanical trading, I always go back to it. I never forget it. It's like a quarterback. It's Tom Brady, it's Peyton Manning, going back to the playbook and flipping through, knowing what your best setups are that make you the most money and sticking to those signals for those setups to really put your position sizing down or up. You know what I mean. Subjective trading relies on pattern recognition, meaning you can identify your setups in the market. Then, most importantly, you can move to the utilization, pattern utilization part of it, which requires us to execute on the patterns that we've recognized and made money on. And that frees up the trader tremendously. Go right back to Douglas. He's about to spit the wisdom, son.
Okay, then you can evolve, if you want, to the subjective stage of trading, because you can make consistent money trading mechanically. Okay, but most people like to be able to use their rational thinking and process and try to figure things out. And the subjective stage of trading is simply, this is a broader, more flexible mode of trading where you use everything you've ever learned about the price movement to determine your edges. In other words, all the different patterns you've learned, all the different nuances of market behavior will determine, where you get in, how much profit you take, where you set your stops. You see, in the subjective mode of trading, if someone said to me, okay, I'm buying here and my stop is here, but the market's starting to come down to my stop, and I get out right here, and I don't let myself get stopped out at my original spot. Truly, for someone who's evolved to the subjective mode of trading, that's all right. You can do that, because you're not doing it out of fear, and you're not doing it out of the fact that you haven't accepted the risk. You're doing it because you recognize the pattern that the market is giving you is such that there's a high probability you are going to get stopped out, and so therefore you might as well just scratch your trade or get out with a little bit of a loss.
Notice how he used the words pattern recognition. In this point, you are recognizing the pattern, but he also used the if, then, therefore. This statement, he just used this statement. If the market is moving down, then it's likely to stop me out. Therefore, they close the trade. They scratch out, right? He just used it. That is the essence of subjective trading, but it's also the essence of mechanical trading. If these conditions are present, then the market is likely to move up. Therefore, I go long, right? That is what we're doing in our heads. We're using these algorithms of thought, of belief, to play the markets. Now, our beliefs are so inherently flawed that we can't rely on them alone. Thus, why mechanical trading is so important. It's so important. It's I'm not gonna let it frustrate me, but man, I'm almost screaming this at my old self, and I'm screaming this at some guys that I've tried to mentor and help into trading. And it's amazing, like the backgrounds that these people have had, the intelligence they've had, engineering backgrounds, professional sports backgrounds. They have college degrees. I don't. And yet they can't trade. They can't do it. And to me, it's because they haven't put in the discipline to become a mechanical trader first. So, see what Tony Robbins has to say real quick. Tony Robbins. I love Tony and Robin. They're great people. All right. Here we go. So we're going to let Tony do a quick wrap on pattern recognition.
And so the bottom line is you need to be good at pattern recognition, and that's what gets somebody strong at anything. I mean, you look at, why is Amazon doing so well? He realized one pattern was valued over anything else, convenience, right? If you look at Tom Brady, a friend of mine, he's got pattern recognition like nobody else at 43 years old. He's able to do things no one dreamed could be done. He's got more Super Bowl rings than any team. So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see. What's the pattern? Then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it. It's another thing to use it.
So he speaks to pattern recognition as a way to mastery of anything. Pattern recognition is the foundation, but with a subjective trader, they must also have pattern utilization. They must know when the pattern that told them to go one way is breaking apart and actually telling them to close out a trade or be flexible and go the other way. So the thing that links subjective trading to pattern recognition and then pattern utilization is flexibility. We must be flexible. And to be flexible of mind, you must be flexible of body. Do yoga, meditate. Do yoga, meditate. Phew. All right, the next level of trading is an intuitive trader. I've only hit this a few times. And I don't believe it can technically be fully relied upon. But we should, and I do, put my effort and energy into cultivating the potential for intuitive trading. Setting up those things that might lead me into what he will speak to as flow, and I will break that down further. But everything I've been doing for the past 5 years has been studying flow triggers and how to create the conditions that best put us into flow. So Mark Douglas is going to talk about how intuitive trading relates to pattern creation. And that's what Tony Robbins considers the third creative skill. So let's listen in on Mark D first and foremost.
And the last stage is the intuitive. This is the most advanced mode of trading. It would be the equivalent to getting a black belt in martial arts. It's when you find yourself in the zone, tapped into the collective consciousness of the market, giving you a sense of the flow.
Stop right there real quick, because he used two words that many people would consider woo-woo, but I am going to break down. He used collective consciousness, he used flow, and maybe flow is not out of reach because there's the likes of Stephen Coulter and Jamie Wheel and the Flow Genome Project and plenty of books and media regarding flow state from all the way back from Csikszentmihalyi. But this is something I want to speak to, the collective consciousness. I've had an experience when I was traveling where I was so tuned into the markets, I knew exactly what was going to happen next. And I did not even worry when I put on size on almost all of my trades. And I was relatively in and out quicker than I'm used to, within like a day or two. But I was making money because I had higher position sizes. And I was catching every down move and then every up move. So every correction and then continuation. It was ridiculous. And I made more money in that month than any of my other months on vacation from my phone. Now, a lot of people wouldn't recommend that for various reasons. But to me, again, when I understood I was in flow, tapped into the Kung Fu fight of an intuitive trader within myself, I had to go. I had to put the gas to the pedal to the gas. You get the pick. I will speak to the default mode network in the brain that prevents us from finding that intuitive trader and that flow state.
If you look at the market as being, a collection of individuals, you can tap into that. You can find yourself. It's not something you can will yourself into. You just find yourself in this zone where you're just seeing and doing things that you can't necessarily explain at a rational level. And the problem is that there are people. Everyone has intuitive capabilities. There are, but some people it's completely shut off, and with others, they don't trust it because, they can't make the distinction between what's intuition and what's just their mind hoping that something's going to happen, or hoping that what they see is really what's going on, and making it feel like intuition. The problem is, until you've acquired these fundamental skills that we're talking about, you definitely don't want to be trading based on intuitive impulses. You just want to make note of them. When you've got the skills, then find yourself in the zone, then go ahead and do whatever.
I mean, he's speaking to it right there. Speaking to it right there. He's saying that the basis of what I'm transferring to you and through my content is that mechanical trading needs to be the basis. Then you get an opportunity to become more of a subjective trader, to check in with your playback, to know your setups, but not necessarily be so mechanical in taking every single trade that presents itself to you based on your signals. So you see the setups in the market, you're like, oh, there's another one of my setups, there's another one of my setups, there's another one of my setups. But you don't necessarily take every one, or as a subjective trader, you take a little bit less position on some and heavier position on others. So now moving into that intuitive state, that collective consciousness, here is Tony Robbins to speak to pattern creation.
And then if you're good after a while, you get to pattern creation. It's like if you learn to play the piano, most people play other people's music. And then there's a point you've learned so much that you're able to create. And I think those three skills are the most important skills. So I look at
these are the most important skills, because pattern creation is truly something where you can't explain it at a rational level. Like Mark Douglas says, you can't explain it at a rational level. So here I'm going to try for a sec.
5 minutes later.
If the market is just compiled of a group of participants, a group of individuals that have their own consciousness, their own thinking patterns, their own beliefs, but they essentially are looking for the same moves using similar indicators, or indicators that do the same thing, their momentum oscillators or their trend-based indicators. We get to a point in the market where, everyone might be seeing the same thing. Now, some traders can act on that correctly and others can't. Now, when I'm speaking about collective consciousness, if all of these groups of participants with their own individual consciousness are thinking and seeing the same thing, and you begin to see it too, and you begin to execute just as they are, you are now putting your capital into the flow, the current of currency, right? That energy is now flowing in the same direction. You're not fighting the current. You're not trying to swim upstream. You're flowing with it. And that's when trading becomes effortless. And that is the notion of flow. Flow is selfless, timeless, effortless, and has this real-time data acquisition. So you're beginning to pull in information that you normally wouldn't have access to. And again, this is in the book Stealing Fire that I've read thoroughly and taught out of, as well as Becoming Superman. And I'm going to read a part of the default mode network that relates directly to this clip. So this is a Medium post called The Brain's Default Mode, what it is and why meditation is the antidote. So of course, I was all about this when I first saw it in 2021. All right, so here is an article titled The Brain's Default Mode, What It Is, and Why Meditation is the Antidote. So, of course, when I found this in 2021, I was like, booyaka sha, let's get it. So there's this inner voice. This inner voice is very impulsive and kind of like the itty bitty shitty committee telling you that this dress makes me look fat. That was foolish thing to say. Why did I do that? Stupid, idiot, stupid. Or probably something more profane if you're like anything like me. So these inner dialogues are always with us. But in Eastern traditions, we call this the monkey mind. Science is now describing this voice as the default mode network, or DMN, okay? If you think that voice is you, you have a long way to evolve out of recognizing that that voice is not you. That is ego. That is the default mode network. That is not the truth of who you are. And I hope that you find that out through your direct experience. So researchers have studied the default mode network for decades, and it's a group of brain regions, not really important which ones, but they're important for survival, okay? That to me was huge. They are important, and this works for our survival. The ego is trying to keep us alive so we don't take the socially awkward risk. The social implications of being foolish, saying something dumb, and being thought a fool hurts you so much because you're not going to belong. And if you don't belong, you don't survive, especially in this day and age, right? Your network is your net worth and all that. Like, there's truth to it. The DMN is useful because it's involved in our memory, particularly, my tongue today, autobiographic episodic memories. So these autobiographic episodic memories are specifically daily memories that play a role in helping us make a model of the world, predict the future based on past events. This is our worldview. This is our beliefs. This is our perspective. Okay? I'm going to make a whole nother video on this, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker. Recent research has associated diseases like depression, anxiety, even schizophrenia with the default mode network. But what the research showed us is that the DMN isn't designed to make us happy. So based on evolution, it is meant to protect us. And one study proved just that. So going down a bit deeper, flow state, right? Flow state. Science defines flow as an optimal state of consciousness. In flow, you perform your best and you feel your best. It's why it's such an addictive state, because the neurochemical cocktail that is released is like all of the pleasures we can get from drugs and alcohol and substances and sex. It's like all of it at once, right? And it's not an overwhelm like you just did a line of cocaine, smoked some meth, and, just everywhere, in ecstasy. Like, it's not all of that overwhelming and you're going to go so high that you crash, but there is an aspect of like, don't expect to get into flow again the next day, and maybe don't watch television, maybe like rest, meditate, do yoga nidra, regular yoga, and read perhaps, or just do something relaxing to calm the mind, something you enjoy. So in flow, parts of the brain don't become hyperactive, but they actually deactivate. We know the name for that state as transient, meaning temporary. So it's transient hypofrontality. Transient hypofrontality. That means this prefrontal cortex that, again, has helped us evolve and survive begins to shut down so we can move into creative states of expression and productivity and learning. So it's where our evolution really can take to the next level. It's where all of our higher cognitive functions exist, is in the prefrontal cortex. So our sense of will, morality, a sense of self, complex decision-making, etc., all come from our prefrontal cortex. It's what makes us human. So what I just said, down here, meditation is the antidote. Meditation is more than spiritual hokum. So a Harvard study showed that a participant over 8 weeks of meditation grew new gray matter in their cerebral cortex, which connects to attention and emotional integration, thus providing emotional mastery. So if you've ever heard that emotions get in our way when we're trading, then guess what your solution is? Meditation. Also, the gray matter in the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, deceased, right? I'm going to say he meant decreased. it decreased. So we didn't need as much in our amygdala, which is also in the book, The Buddha Brain. It's also referred to as kind of the fire alarm. It's the center that receives threats from our senses, mainly eyes and ears and touch, but it's the one that sets off the alarm and triggers the cascade of everything else to alert us and activate us. Maybe it's neuroepinephrine and neuroadrenaline and instigate movement in the body, dopamine release. Move, you got to go, you got to run, you got to get out of this house, it's on fire.
Even if there's a fire.
People gain more control over their emotions. Even impulse control becomes better. Crazy, right? Now, one last thing just to convince you more about meditation. When Tim Ferriss interviewed 500 of the top world-class performers in a book called The Tools of Titans, right? He saw that the most practiced routine they have is meditation. At least 80% of them have some mindfulness practice / meditation. So again, I think we're going to move into a day and age where it's a no-brainer. Like, just like people go running, but if you said, hey, like in the 1950s, yeah, like I like to run every morning. Like, who's chasing you? What are you running from in every morning? Like, do you need a safer neighborhood to live in? Do you need to buy a gun?
Veronica and I are trying this new fad called jogging. I believe it's jogging or yogging. It might be a soft J. I'm not sure, but apparently you just run for an extended period of time. It's supposed to be wild.
Anyways, like, there's an evolution to where I think that meditation is becoming and will become this practical thing that it's like you don't meditate, like you don't exercise, things like that, where especially if you're a trader, especially if you have a high demanding, high performance profession, and that if you don't take time to meditate, you're killing yourself, bruh. And you're killing your productivity, and you're killing your happiness, and killing brain cells, as we saw here. So anyways, Mark Douglas is going to talk about this to a T.
When you start thinking at a rational level, you flip yourself right out of the zone. Because your rational mind wants reasons. Your rational mind wants logical reasons, and these intuitive impulses don't come from that part of your brain. They come from that creative part of your brain. And by definition, creativity is bringing something forth that didn't previously exist. It may exist somewhere in the world or in the universe somewhere, but it didn't exist in your mind, and it's outside the parameters of what you already believe. So there's going to be an instant conflict between what you think at a rational level and your intuitive impulses, until you train your rational mind to accept your intuitive impulses.
Training your rational mind to accept your intuitive impulses. I know nothing better than mindfulness practices, and specifically the elite practice of meditation, silent seated meditation. Can't get enough. So anyways, what he just spoke to was that it's like he didn't have the words for it. This creative part of the brain versus this prefrontal cortex that wants reasons and wants to be rational. It's not, it has a sense of self, a sense of will, complex decision making. And even up here at the top, this is the medial prefrontal cortex, all of these things that are involved with making a model of the world, predicting the future based on past events. That is how we create our beliefs. We have an experience. We say, oh, when I run into a barking dog, that barking dog is a bad dog, is trying to bite me, and therefore all dogs are bad. Whereas I see a barking dog and I'm just like, what's the matter? What's going on? You know what I mean? Like, there's an aspect of like, I know that dog is nice. I just know it's either defending its owner or its territory, but underneath it all, it's nice. And that's because my experience with dogs have not been led to being attacked, to being bit. Whereas another person has been bit, it's obvious. So essentially, the experiences we have get interpreted by the mind, and then we create reactions to them. And the more severe the heightened emotion is, the heightened regulation of our nervous system is during that experience, the deeper the impression is made in our brains and our bodies, our neurology, our nervous system. So again, we can get triggered into a heightened state because of a past experience that went poorly. Or if we had a past experience that was full of pleasure, let's say prom night, promise. So let's say on prom night, you scored, you now have like this heightened state of like, oh man, when I see said girl or see a girl, so to speak, especially in a dress or maybe in that same color dress, or like when she looks at me like this, you just get this trigger of like, oh, immense pleasure is coming. So it's ingrained deeper and we will react accordingly. So essentially the mind is full of reaction. To pull ourselves out of reaction and into response, we have to meditate. We have to find mindfulness practices. But don't fool yourself. Go be a black belt and meditate. If you really want to make money and you really want to improve your trading game and your life, go meditate, man. Start building that. Find a community. There's people out there that want to meditate. And I'm building one. Thanks for checking in, my friends. We're going to part this up into like multiple videos because it went way too long.